think we should talk about Dune Part 3 and the recent title announcement, if that is even official. What are your thoughts on Variety's report on Dune Part 3?
Yeah, it was very odd because I feel like it's official for as long as they want it to be. It doesn't seem it's set in stone. I've seen James Gunn change the name of his Superman movie. He announced it as Superman Legacy, and it had that title for quite a while until like deep into production. He just changed it simply to Superman. And same thing with Wicked, which was separated into two parts. It was announced as part 1 and 2, but then after part 1 came out, then they changed the title for the sequel as Wicked for Good. So I feel like maybe it's a placeholder for now. I don't know what the site Rentrack even is, and that's the source that Variety was quoting. I literally have never heard of it until that article. So I don't know if that's like a credible thing as far as the film world goes.
I hadn't heard of that either, Rentrack. And I kind of followed the thread and I was on Wikipedia. I think it's a different company name now. It's like Comms Good, but I think it's a pretty much industry accepted company that follows productions and is like the source to look at of like where a production is currently standing.
I just have never heard of it in reference to what an official title will be. And I honestly feel that the production or the studio could change it at any time before they start ramping up marketing for it. So I think it's perfectly fine to have it as part 3 if they want to market it that way. But I also think maybe they just want to test it out, because there are studios who feel that the part 3 or the sequel name maybe doesn't test well. And maybe that's why Wicked Part 2 changed to Wicked for Good. Maybe they thought that no one would really look at a part 2 with any significance as far as awards bodies goes. So I feel like it could easily change anytime before the ramp up to marketing. So it's official for now.
It's official as it's going to get for now, yeah. And even Mission Impossible, the recent one, did the same thing where they first part was Dead Reckoning Part 1, and then it didn't do super well. And I don't know if they've changed some things in the script, but then they just abandoned it. And I think it worked. I think their plan worked, and sort of the public consciousness kind of just forgot about the Part 1, and they were just like, oh, yeah, Mission Impossible movie. And I wonder if that might be the same thing with that happens as we get closer. Either Denis pushes the studio or the public perception just encourages the studio to say, yeah, let's call it Messiah.
That's a really good point, because there's an argument to be made from a marketing standpoint for either title, for Part 3 or Messiah. And obviously there's been a precedent for changes for both when it comes to accessibility to the public. And I think you're right that that did end up helping Mission Impossible's box office, because they just saw it as maybe we're interested in it as a self-contained movie, though it definitely did pick up from Dead Reckoning's story. But yeah, it would just maybe looked better, or was sold better to audiences with that different title. It still had Reckoning in it, so there was that connection.
Yeah.
It's already been interchangeably used, Dune 3 and Dune Messiah, all the reporting that I've seen. And I feel like the audiences would accept it either way. They know it's the same characters that are returning.
No, I think you're right. And I already am like a little bit annoyed. Not a big deal, but I just get annoyed about how many different versions of saying Dune Part 1. Like, because if somebody says just the word Dune, in my head, I think they're probably talking about Part 1, and then Dune Part 2 is Dune Part 2. But every outlet, I feel like every day just calls it something else. They'll spell out the Part 2, or then they'll just use the number Part 2 or Dune 2. In a lot of ways, I wish there was a clearer stance from the studio of just saying, like, this is Dune Roman numeral 1, Dune Roman numeral 2.
It's interesting because initially, how this whole process even began, there was only one film greenlit, and it was the first half. The second half wasn't even greenlit until the first movie came out. And it wasn't a sure thing until then that it was proven to be successful. So from the very beginning, it was just those two movies, and the one, but the potential for the second half.
Right.
And then that was it. And then Denis started saying that it was his dream to do Messiah as well. So it's very unusual how this whole process of how these films were made and marketed. And it's interesting because I think it's the first time that an official Dune movie source, like the social media account, came out that same day of that Variety article that was pushing the Dune Part 3 official title and about the IMAX cameras. They were so quiet about everything with Robert Pattinson's casting. Other people were quoting that, and then the twins casting and all that. Now they've come out from an official source and they don't call it Dune Part 3. Their first announcement was to say production has started, and they have the picture of Arrakis, but they say it's the third film in Denis Villeneuve's trilogy. Well, if it's so official, I feel like they would just say that. But I feel like it's very intentional that they came out that same day. The Variety was pushing that, and they didn't call it Dune Part 3.
Yeah. If
So
it wasn't intentional, then that's just like a crazy coincidence. But I agree. I think that had to be intentional. It felt so like pointed that they just said Denis Villeneuve's next film.
And I feel like it's just leaving the option open. They could certainly still go with that title.
Right.
I just think they left it open-ended. From the official Dune social media account, left that up in the air. They didn't categorically state it as Dune Part 3. So I think that that's very telling. That it still could be up in the air. It's official until they change it, I guess.
I'm curious to see if we get another clipboard, a clacker picture like we did for Part 2. That was their production announcement for Part 2, was the clapperboard with the Part 2 title on it in the font, and it was very official. I wonder if we're ever going to get that, if it will be soon, or if they avoid doing that because they just don't want to announce the name yet.
The official marketing, it's always been strange for these films. It's always been very subdued, I guess. When you look at other directors in other studios, like James Gunn constantly talks about his movies. He was constantly talking about Superman. It's so different to Denis Villeneuve's approach. He's very subdued. He keeps his cards close to the vest until like even after the movies come out, then he's talking about it.
I'm split because I do really value that. I think Denis is such an interesting person, and I resonate a lot with his language and how he communicates to us through his movies. But there's another part of me that's like really frustrated and jealous of James Gunn fans that they get their director talking all about it for months and months. But at the end of the day, I think it wouldn't fly the same way with Dune. I think it works in some ways as it does favors to the Dune world because the Dune world is so mysterious and subdued and careful. I don't know.
And you don't want to spoil things for fans who hadn't read the books, too. So I do realize there's a balance to be had there. I feel like James Gunn could learn a thing or two from Denis Villeneuve, actually. I think there's, like you said, I actually do admire that he just keeps his nose to the grindstone and lets his work speak for itself. I admire that to a point. It's just when rumors and leaks start flowing is when I kind of wish for some more clarity officially from the studio. And it's happened before. There's just so many things that we're longing to see and that we're questioning about. Right after Part 1 came out, there was this rampant rumor spreading that in Dune Part 2, Chani was going to be the main character. So many were reporting that. And it was based off of an interview that was conducted. I think Denis was speaking in his native tongue in French. And I think it was also translated from a different language and then translated from that to English. So it was kind of obscure as to get to the truth about what he actually meant. And everyone was talking about that. And when I went to the source, I'm like, no, he's just saying she's a main character, which I think is accurate to the source material. It's very much an ensemble, like Lord of the Rings is kind of like that. It's very much an ensemble story. Just as like Stilgar, I would regard as a main character, but Paul is the main character. So there's just stuff like that. At that time was very much, I'm trying to speak in defense of Denis and what I think the source material in line with that, and to say that I think she's a main character, but not the main character. But it was just a huge story, and it would have definitely helped to have some clarification on that at the time.
Right.
And I wonder if we're going through the same thing now with these rampant leaks and rumors that are kind of stirring up a firestorm of controversy. And in that regard, I wish there was more handle on how information is disseminated to the public, like Jason Momoa's return.
I do wonder if like Denis was upset at him. I'm sure he was holding that super close.
Timothée Chalamet like revealed it first during Dune Part 2
was
press.
he the first one?
Yeah. It was on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast. So Josh Horowitz, I think is his name. It wasn't on the podcast, but he was just doing an interview with him. He lamented that Jason Momoa wasn't going to be in this movie. He really liked his character. And Timothée Chalamet said, oh, well, he'll be back.
It's a tough line to walk with, you know, the books being 60-ish years old and these stories have been available to people, but not really in the 2020s public consciousness. Hate is such a main character and an interesting one. And I've been saying for like at least a year, like I hope they don't try to just contain and hopefully nobody finds out or knows. I think it would be smart for them to announce something, get on top of it, and then just not say anything detailed about it.
About his nature?
Yeah, about just the nature of his return. And
well, that's funny because when it kind of got out, Jason Momoa was doing his press for Minecraft, and one of the interviewers just point blank asked him if he was going to be in the new film, Dune 3, and kind of painted him into a corner But he also, the way he framed the question, he told the audience how he was going to come back. And I was saying before, look, when it comes to Frank Herbert and how he revealed things, he wasn't one to rely on shock value for those revelations. He just tells you what's going on. He lets you know from the very beginning what the conspiracy is, right from the start with Dune. He tells you who the traitor is within House Atreides right off the bat, because it wasn't about that revelation. It was about us, the reader, being clued in on that from the beginning and seeing that unfold, knowing what was to come. It's a cool experience how Frank Herbert writes those things. In a similar way to Dune Messiah, we also know the conspiracy, what the conspirators plan to do, and how Duncan is going to be used in that. In the first few pages, we know, so it's not like it's a spoiler that's going to mess up anything as far as your viewing experience, because right from the bat, we know what the plan is with Duncan. We know how he returns. Because it's not about that, it's about what happens afterwards. But I feel like the studio could have done a better job if they had been proactive and they themselves would have just come out and said that Jason Momoa is returning and just leave it at that. People could have just easily have assumed, if they were normies and hadn't read the books, that maybe it's a similar situation to Jameis in Dune Part 2. Maybe it's in a vision that Paul is seeing. People could have easily made that connection. And that's why I'm saying that I wish they were more proactive in how information is distributed to the public. And I feel like they could have been more careful when it comes to the ones who hadn't read the book.
I so agree with that.
Hopefully this inspires them to read it before more things get spoiled, because then later the twins are revealed.
Yeah, maybe that's the incentive, is just allow the leaks to go crazy and inspire people to, maybe that's part of Denis' master plan, is to inspire people to read the books.